That's what I'm telling you.
So what did you do lying for?
Listen, I did not f her. We were talking.
Okay, but you,
and that's
you understand what I'm saying, how it looked? Because he not
I know how it looks. Listen, you keep acting like y'all don't know who y'all dealing with. You dealing with Curtis Petty Jackson. And I told you, at the end of the day, he has been back in the corner, this man.
What if everything you've been hearing about this situation is only part of the story? Because what started off as jokes, memes, and light trolling slowly turned into something much bigger, something filled with accusations, alleged evidence, and conflicting stories that don't quite line up. And the moment one particular name entered the conversation, everything changed. Because when he gets involved, things don't just go away, they escalate. So here's what really happened. The situation began brewing when tensions started rising between 50 Cent and Papoose, and at first, it didn't seem serious at all. It looked like the usual internet behavior: AI-generated memes, jokes, subtle shots, nothing out of the ordinary in today's social media culture. But if you've followed 50 Cent for any amount of time, you already know that what looks like harmless trolling on the surface can quickly turn into something much more calculated. He has a reputation for playing the long game, and more importantly, for never backing down once he feels challenged. As things progressed, Papoose decided to respond, not with silence, but with a diss track, which immediately raised the stakes. This wasn't just jokes anymore, it was becoming personal. And then suddenly, in the middle of all that tension, 50 Cent went completely quiet. No posts, no responses, no reactions. To the outside world, it looked like he had stepped away, like maybe the situation had reached its end. That silence gave people the impression that Papoose had the upper hand, and even Claressa Shields seemed to believe that narrative. She publicly celebrated, appearing confident that her side had come out on top, and that whatever conflict had been brewing was finally over. But that assumption didn't last long, because what many people have learned over time is that silence from 50 Cent rarely means defeat. More often than not, it means preparation. And sure enough, just when people thought everything had settled down, he returned, and not quietly. He came back with a face swap image involving Papoose and Claressa, captioned in a way that immediately reignited attention and made it clear that he wasn't done. In fact, he was just getting started. From that point forward, things escalated quickly. The tone shifted from playful trolling to something much more serious when 50 Cent began questioning Papoose directly about Claressa's alleged connection to Maserati Bud. And then came the moment that really changed everything. He claimed to have ring camera footage that showed Maserati Bud at Claressa's home. This wasn't just gossip anymore. Whether true or not, presenting something as evidence immediately shifts how people perceive a situation. It takes it out of the realm of speculation and places it into something that feels more real, more concrete, and far more damaging. What made this even more intense was the timing. All of this was happening around Christmas, a time when Claressa was already facing criticism online for not being with Papoose. Reports were circulating that Papoose was spending the holiday with Remy Ma and their daughter, while Claressa was assumed to be spending that time alone. But once these new claims started emerging, that narrative began to shift. Suddenly, people were questioning whether she had her own situation unfolding behind the scenes during that same period. Claressa didn't stay silent. She pushed back strongly against the allegations, denying any kind of relationship beyond a casual interaction. According to her, Maserati Bud wasn't someone she had invited personally. He was simply there because he came along with a friend.
Why are you still insinuating on your post that I had something going on with this boy? You had ring camera footage and you had videos of me in the shower or whatever. Said, where is that? You don't get to insinuate stuff like that and then you don't have to stand on it. Where is that, 50? Where is that? You're not gonna put this stud looking on me.
In an attempt to shut down the speculation, she even went as far as recording a phone call with him and sharing it publicly, where both of them appeared to agree that nothing physical had taken place between them. From her perspective, this was supposed to bring clarity and put an end to the rumors once and for all.
Okay, Maserati. take me off your page. You got this video, whatever these pictures was, take them down. He took them down. It messed up my page. Everything is lined up by threes. Okay, it's not that serious. You have your videos on my page and don't nobody film me and you together. All I ever did was show he begging to not get these pictures taken down. Excuse me, bud. I'm going to report it if you don't take it down. Make you 2 other posts and replace them. Take me off your page. You gonna mess my page up. Whatever that means.
But instead of ending the conversation, that move seemed to make things even more complicated. Because Maserati Bud didn't agree with how the situation was being portrayed. After that call was made public, he came forward with his own version of events, and it painted a very different picture.
We record phone calls. Guess what? I'm finna release all this footage. Yeah, that's right. I said I'm finna release the footage, man. Yeah, on Christmas, I was inside the crib. When you was on FaceTime, Papoose, I got the video. When she FaceTiming you, guess what? I'm sitting right there in the living room at the same chair that I helped her get for her homewarming gift. That bed, I picked out that bed.
According to him, their connection went far beyond a one-time meeting or a casual encounter. He claimed they had spent significant time together, working on music, hanging out, and building a level of familiarity that contradicted the idea that he was just a random guest.
You really exposing yourself right now. Claressa, you with a nigga, you with a nigga. Come on, man, no red chairs in your crib. You know who got that. You know who did that. Don't make me do this.
And then came one detail that really caught people's attention. He said he had even helped pick out furniture for her home. Now, whether that's true or not, that specific claim changed how a lot of people interpreted the situation. Because for many, that's not something you do with someone you barely know. It suggests a level of comfort and involvement that goes beyond surface-level interaction, and naturally, it raised more questions than answers.
Me keep showing shit that I really don't want to show this shit. I'm trying to spare you, but they gonna swipe left and see how you went off on me because I was with my girls and you got mad. And you said you might as well go ahead and go with Pap because shit, he just got one wife. This nigga got 3 girlfriends. Let's tell the truth. You feel me? I'm finna show them. You got mad because I was with them on Christmas. Then you like, oh, how you vibe with me on Christmas and then you went and vibe with them on Christmas.
At this point, the situation became less about what happened and more about which version of the story people believed. On one side, you had Claressa denying anything serious and trying to provide proof to back her claims. On the other side, you had Maserati Bud insisting that their connection was deeper than what was being admitted publicly. And as those two narratives clashed, the internet did what it always does. It started filling in the gaps with its own assumptions.
You want to sit here and show receipts. I'm finna show receipts. Claressa, you know the truth. You know I'm finna expose the truth, man. And you know they gonna swipe left and see what time it is. Claressa, you were with me the long way. The only reason that you went old way is because a nigga poly. Everybody who know me know I'm poly. They know I got 2-3 girlfriends. And you said, "Bud, I don't want to be a..."
Then things took another turn when older allegations began resurfacing. There were claims from a woman who had previously suggested that Claressa and Maserati Bud were already involved before any of this became public. At the time, those claims didn't gain much traction, reportedly because they were taken down shortly after being posted. But now, with everything else happening, people began revisiting those earlier statements and viewing them in a completely different light.
Look at it now, and I feel sorry for old girl. Like, I feel sorry for her. Because I know the circles that's being ran and wrapped around over there. Like, I would cry. I feel bad.
Maserati Bud continued to speak out, adding even more layers to the story. He suggested that their relationship wasn't exclusive and claimed that he had been open about seeing multiple people. According to him, that was something she was aware of, which introduces an entirely different dynamic to the situation. It shifts the conversation away from simple denial and into something much more complex, where perception, expectations, and reality may not all align. Meanwhile, reports began circulating that when Papoose confronted Claressa about everything, she allegedly admitted to having an emotional connection with Maserati Bud, while still maintaining that nothing physical had happened. Now, whether that's accurate or not hasn't been confirmed, but even the idea of that admission added fuel to the fire, because for many people, an emotional connection can be just as significant as a physical one, depending on how they interpret the situation. At this stage, the internet had already built its own narrative, a narrative that includes alleged visits, shared time, conflicting explanations, and unanswered questions about what really happened during that holiday period. And once a story reaches that level of visibility, it becomes incredibly difficult to control how it's perceived. Every new detail, every new claim only adds another layer, making it harder to separate fact from speculation. And then there's one more angle that people have started paying attention to. Comments that Remy Ma made in the past about Papoose and relationships are now being revisited. At the time, many dismissed those statements as emotional or biased, something said in the aftermath of a complicated history. But now, with everything unfolding, some are beginning to question whether there was more truth to those comments than they initially believed. In the end, the reality is that much of this remains unverified. There are multiple sides, multiple perspectives, and no single version of events that everyone agrees on. But that hasn't stopped people from forming opinions, drawing conclusions, and deciding what they believe happened behind closed doors. And once those opinions take hold, they tend to stick, regardless of what new information comes out. So now the question becomes, what actually happened? Was this all just a misunderstanding that spiraled out of control? Or is there more truth hidden beneath the surface that hasn't fully come out yet? And more importantly, who's really telling the full story?